And then, Saylor made this point too on the show that that's also what that dislocation you describe between digital and physical reality, that's what protects Bitcoin from sudden 51% attacks, for instance. Like it's really hard to spin up 51% of the network overnight. It's impossible, frankly, right? As you're describing these lead times with chip manufacturer, um, subsequent to every other hurdle that you have to clear. So that's really interesting.
Maybe a couple of points on that,
yeah.
Robert. So the 51% attack, you're entirely right. Like to spin up 51% is next to impossible now, given the size. What Bitcoin mining does is essentially layer down this protocol in digital concrete every 10 minutes by virtue of that energy expenditure. And that's what gives it its immutability, censorship resistance, because once that block is found and the miners and that 8-10 gigawatts of power moves on to the next block, good luck. Like that is cemented in stone forever. Like the laws of physics basically preclude you from unwinding that. So it's fundamental to the operation of Bitcoin and the security of all those attributes that we love. In terms of a 51% attack, like 51% attacks, they don't work. Like there's so much misinformation around there. So you play out what happens if you actually get 51% of the hash rate. Like it's never going to happen, but let's play it out, right? And we've actually seen this on a lot of lower market capitalization coins. All you can do as a 51% attacker is control what's in the next block, which means you can censor transactions. So if you've got 51%, there are two things you can do. You can double spend your own transactions, or you can censor other people's transactions. Let's deal with them sequentially. You want to censor other people's transactions. Be my guest. You find the next block, censor them. You don't get the revenue. You find the next block, censor them. Don't get the revenue. You find 3 in a row with 51% of the network. Probability is against you, but it's certainly feasible and you probably will have periods. Censor the transactions. And guess what? 49%, someone in that group finds the 4th block. They collect all the transaction fees. So all of a sudden, the economic incentives work completely against you. Why would you do it? And what are you actually achieving by attacking the network? Nothing. The second aspect is being able to double spend your own coins. Now, this would be the classic playbook that people talk about would be, I've got 100 Bitcoin. I send that to an exchange. I then sell those Bitcoin, buy something else, whether it's US dollar Tether or some other coin. I then withdraw the other coin, and then I rewind the blockchain back to where it was before. So I keep my 100 Bitcoin and I get to keep the coins that I've sold. Now, all of a sudden, like how much time is that going to take? Like most exchanges will make you wait at least, 3, 4, 6 blocks before they'll register a transaction on it. And then you're spending all this energy and expenditure to try and fight the other 49% to rewind the blockchain. And there's a whole probability associated with that, which makes it really unlikely that you'll actually outpace those 49%. And what have you achieved? You've spent the equivalent of billions of dollars of annualized expenditure on energy to double spend 100 Bitcoin. Now, maybe you've got 10,000 Bitcoin and it makes this slightly worthwhile, but you start playing this out and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like maybe if someone got 90% of the global hash rate, then the probabilities start to skew. But the probability that that's ever going to happen is so unlikely given the size of the industry and how geographically distributed it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to lay it out. And then I guess an important point here is that mining pools are not controlling that portion of hash rate, right? Even if you had a mining pool that represented 90% of the global hash rate, that doesn't mean they control it. Because a lot of people like to point to
another
that.
Misconception. Yeah, another misconception. You're spot on. There is a drop-down box in the software where we can reroute the hash rate at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are not beholden to any mining pool. They are a service provider. They're a commodity. There is any number of one of them. You can change at the drop of a hat. We had an instance about 6 months ago where we were using one mining pool. The web page went down. We couldn't see our live hash rate. We tried to contact them, couldn't immediately get in contact. So we switched our hash rate to another provider. Now, as it emerges, it was just their front end display that went down. They were still recognizing the hashing capacity. But as part of our business continuity planning, it's very easy just to change between the mining pools. So to play out the point you're trying to make is the moment one mining pool goes rogue and starts wanting to do something silly with the Bitcoin network, it's like, oh, we're out of here. It's our hash rate.
Right. Yeah. Excellent point. And it's so fascinating to me that even as a 51% attacker, you're still incentivized to behave honestly, to interact honestly, right? That's the magic of Bitcoin, really. It just incentivizes everyone at every level to be honest, which is something we desperately need in the world, obviously. And I guess the last point there is that the proponents of the 51% attack is like a viable attack vector. They always completely discount any adaptive response by the other 49%, as you're saying. And I just think that is so short-sighted. I mean, it's not like people are just going to sit around on their laurels while the network is under attack. I mean, every participant in Bitcoin has so much skin in the game, so much capital, time, effort tied up in this. It's obvious that they would fight to protect the network under circumstances such as that.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say it, because Bitcoin to me is this game theoretic perfect structure where it's just cracked the ultimate game theory where every incentive points towards securing the network and supporting it. You can't beat it. You have to join it at some point. And that goes at multiple levels. I remember there was this is probably only a few weeks ago now, someone published an article basically claiming that early Bitcoin miners and network participants were behaving really altruistically to support the network. They had the opportunity to attack it, chose not to. That's a weakness in Bitcoin's design. And I think Nick Carter tore shreds off it. But it comes back to people don't behave altruistically in a market environment. People behave according to their self-interests. And that's what Bitcoin thrives on. Your interest as an individual participant in that network is to support the asset, support the network, because that's what benefits you most. And once you realize you can't attack it, you can't benefit from trying to fight it, you end up joining it and having to support it, which just feeds on itself and creates that network effect.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. I like the descriptor, a perfect game theoretic structure. I've had a similar revelation about Bitcoin. I described it as a vortex of positive incentives. You just can't escape it, right? Like you're paid to help the network proliferate, and you can ignore that and fight it and resist it as long as you want. But Bitcoin just keeps on chugging along, keeps on recruiting new talent, time, energy, capital. So at some point, yeah, you're forced into that old adage: if you can't beat them, join them.
Absolutely. And if you strip that back to the macro and say Bitcoin as an asset, if you can't beat it, join them, you've got an asset that is perfectly scarce. There is only 21 million. That won't change. We have never as humanity seen anything like this. You look at the supply curve of gold in comparison as the scarcest asset, it's going parabolic. 1.8% year on year compounds pretty quickly on a long-term time frame. So you've got this asset where there's only 21 million. Every 4 years, the supply gets cut in half to get to that cap. And then you say, well, the longer it survives, the lower the perceived risk because it's got that longevity, attracts the marginal buyer, price goes up, the increased price attracts a new set of participants, and you get that kind of rolling network effect and positive reinforcing cycle. And then you zoom out and you look at central bank money printing, quantitative easing, all the stuff we know that's happening in the world today, which mainstream is now starting to accept. The death of currencies, like they're spiraling. And you go, wow, you've got two exponential functions colliding. What do you think is going to happen? You've got the exponential scarcity of Bitcoin with the supply schedule starting to plateau. And then you've got the exponential supply of US dollars and fiat currencies. And those two things are intersecting. Like, what is going to happen? Like, there is only one outcome in my mind unless a black swan comes out of somewhere and takes down Bitcoin. And I just don't see how that can happen, because the incentive to take down Bitcoin has been there in an open market with multi-billion dollars of bounty for anyone that can do it for 12 years. So it is fascinating when you play it out, and it just feels like it just takes time and awareness.